Blake Shelton was never just the man you saw on television. Yes, the world knows that version, the towering country star with the easy grin, the quick humor, and the effortless charm. The coach who sat in the red chair for over a decade. The voice behind dozens of #1 hits. The man who made country music feel familiar even to people who had never stepped foot in Nashville. But here's a question worth asking before we go any further. What do we really know about someone once the cameras turn off? Because behind the applause, the awards, and the laughter, there was another story unfolding. A quieter one. A harder one. A story about grief, identity, love, and a body and mind that eventually demanded honesty. And maybe, if you listen closely, you'll find pieces of your own story in his. The story of Blake Shelton doesn't begin under stage lights or inside a recording studio. It begins in Ada, Oklahoma, a small town where life isn't measured in headlines, but in habits. Where mornings start early, neighbors wave without thinking, and the rhythm of life is steady, predictable, comforting. In Ada, people don't pretend to be something they're not. You are who you are. And for Blake, that meant growing up surrounded by music, family, and something deeper, roots. But even in places where life feels steady, it only takes one moment for everything to shift. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment that split your life into before and after? For Blake, that moment came at 14 years old. His older brother, Richie, wasn't just a sibling. He was a guide. A quiet force shaping Blake's identity long before Blake even realized it. Through thin walls, late at night, Blake would listen to Richie's music, absorbing every note, every lyric, every emotion. That's how influence works sometimes, not through instruction, but through presence. Richie was that presence. And then, suddenly, he wasn't. A tragic car accident. 3 lives lost. One ordinary day turned irreversible. Blake would later describe the aftermath not as chaos, but as silence. Not just emotional silence, but something heavier. A kind of stillness that fills a room so completely, it changes how you breathe in it. Can you imagine that? Walking into a house that sounds the same, but feels completely different? His father told him something that most people never forget once they hear it. You don't get over this. You just learn to live with it. And Blake did what many people do. He learned to live with it. But here's the deeper question. What happens when you learn to carry pain, instead of confronting it? Does it fade? Or does it quietly shape everything you become? At 17, Blake made a decision that would change his life forever. He left Ada. Think about that for a moment, not just physically, but emotionally. He left behind familiarity. Safety. The place where his brother lived in memory. Why? Because sometimes staying still feels harder than moving forward. So he went to Nashville. No guarantees. No clear path. Just belief, and maybe a little stubbornness. What would you have done at 17? Would you have stayed where it was safe, or chased something uncertain? The early years weren't glamorous. There were no spotlights waiting for him. No instant recognition. Just long days, longer nights, and a constant undercurrent of doubt. He painted houses, took odd jobs, wrote songs that no one heard, knocked on doors that didn't open. And yet, he stayed. Why do some people give up when things get hard, while others keep going? Is it talent? Or something deeper? Blake kept going. And slowly, almost quietly, things began to change. A connection here. A conversation there. A record deal that didn't seem like much at the time, but turned out to be everything. Then came a song, Austin. A song that almost didn't make it. A song that nearly disappeared when his label shut down just weeks after its release. Imagine that. Working for years, and then watching your big break almost vanish overnight. Would you have walked away? Blake didn't. And somehow, the song survived. Not just survived, it soared. By 2001, he had his first #1 hit. And just like that, the world started to notice. Success has a way of arriving suddenly, even when it's been building for years. Tours followed. Albums. Awards. Applause. And eventually, something bigger, television. The Voice. A red chair. A national audience. A new kind of fame. Blake wasn't just a country artist anymore. He became a personality. A presence. Someone people felt like they knew. But here's something worth thinking about. When the world starts to define you, how do you hold on to who you really are? Because success doesn't just bring opportunity. It brings pressure, expectations, and sometimes, escape. For Blake, that escape came in a form that didn't seem unusual at first. Alcohol. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't denied. In fact, it was celebrated. It became part of his public image. The jokes. The stories. The persona. And here's where things get uncomfortable, but real. Have you ever held on to something not because it helped you, but because it felt like part of who you were? That was Blake. Drinking wasn't just a habit, it became identity. And when something becomes identity, letting it go feels like losing a piece of yourself. Then came love. And heartbreak. His relationship with Miranda Lambert felt powerful. Two artists, both intense, both passionate, both deeply connected to their music. From the outside, it seemed unbreakable. But from the inside, things are rarely that simple. By 2015, it was over. And not quietly. Their divorce became public, dissected, talked about, speculated on. But what the world saw wasn't the full story. Because behind the headlines, there was something much quieter happening. Blake hit rock bottom. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies. The quiet kind. The kind where everything slows down. Where the noise fades, and all you're left with are your thoughts. Have you ever sat alone with your thoughts, and realized you didn't recognize yourself anymore? That's where he was. And in that space, something unexpected happened. He met someone. Gwen Stefani. Now pause for a moment and think about this. What are the chances that two people, both going through heartbreak, both trying to rebuild, find each other at the exact same time? It sounds like something written for a movie. But it wasn't scripted. It was real. Two lives unraveling, side by side. What started as simple conversations, shared experiences, mutual understanding, began to grow into something deeper. Because sometimes, connection isn't about similarity. It's about timing. They understood each other in a way few people could. The pain, the confusion, the rebuilding. And for the first time in a long time, Blake wasn't just getting through the day. He was feeling something again. Hope. But here's the truth about change. It doesn't happen all at once. Love can open the door. But you still have to walk through it. By 2023, something had shifted again. Fans noticed it before he said anything. He looked different. Heavier. Slower. Less energetic. The humor was still there, but it felt different. Like it was covering something deeper. Behind the scenes, life had changed. He had stepped away from The Voice. 4 years, that show had given his life structure. Routine. Purpose beyond music. And when that structure disappeared, something else filled the space. Old habits. Because when life slows down, the things we've been avoiding tend to catch up with us. Have you ever noticed that? When you're busy, you can outrun a lot. But when things get quiet, everything becomes louder. Blake began to feel it. Not just emotionally, but physically. Fatigue. Weight gain. A sense that something wasn't right. And for someone who had spent years laughing things off, this was different. Because your body doesn't joke. It tells the truth, whether you're ready to hear it or not. So the question became unavoidable. How long can you keep living a life that doesn't serve you, before something has to change? The turning point didn't come with a dramatic announcement. No big moment. No headline. Just a quiet realization. This isn't working anymore. And maybe you've had that moment too. Not loud. Not obvious. Just a thought that won't go away. Something has to change. Blake started small. Cutting back. Paying attention. Listening, to his body, to his mind, to the people around him. Gwen played a role in that. Not by forcing change, but by supporting it. Encouraging healthier choices. Creating a different environment. Showing that life didn't have to revolve around the habits he once thought defined him. And here's something important. Change is easier when you don't have to do it alone. But it's still your decision. Day by day, things shifted. Not perfectly. Not instantly. But consistently. And over time, those small changes became something bigger. So let me ask you this. What if the things you think define you are actually the things holding you back? What if letting go doesn't mean losing yourself, but finding who you really are? Blake's journey isn't about fame. It's not about music. It's about something much more universal. Loss, identity, escape, and eventually, honesty. Because at some point, everyone reaches a moment where they have to ask themselves, am I living the life I want, or the life I've gotten used to? Today, Blake Shelton is still the man people recognize. The voice, the humor, the presence. But there's something different underneath it now. Something quieter, more aware. Because the truth is, he didn't just build a career. He rebuilt himself. And maybe that's the real story. Not the success, not the fame, but the willingness to look at your life and choose something better. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it asks you to release the version of yourself you've been holding on to for years. Because real change doesn't begin with motivation. It begins with honesty. So here's where we pause, and where your story quietly meets his. What part of your life have you been managing, instead of truly confronting? And what might happen if, just for a moment, you stopped avoiding it? Because sometimes, the most powerful transformation doesn't come from adding something new. It comes from having the courage to let something go. For Blake Shelton, that moment didn't arrive with headlines or dramatic music. It came quietly. Food, alcohol, inactivity, small choices, repeated daily. The kind that don't feel dangerous in the moment, but slowly reshape everything. Within months, he gained over 30 pounds. But here's what makes this story deeply human. There wasn't a breaking point the world could see. No public collapse. No viral confession. There was just a moment. A scale. A number. 250 pounds. And a thought that cut through everything else. You've got to do something. Now pause for a second and answer this honestly. Have you ever had a moment like that? Not loud. Not dramatic. Just you. And the truth you can't ignore anymore? Maybe it wasn't a number on a scale. Maybe it was the way you felt walking upstairs. The way your energy disappeared before the day even began. Or maybe it was something deeper, something harder to explain. That quiet realization that the life you're living isn't quite the life you want. That's where Blake found himself. Not at rock bottom, but at a crossroads. And what he did next is what makes this story matter. Because he didn't chase a quick fix. No extreme diets. No 30-day transformation promises. No shortcuts designed to impress people. Instead, he chose something far less exciting, but infinitely more powerful. Consistency. And let's be honest, consistency isn't glamorous. It doesn't trend. It doesn't get applause in the beginning. It's waking up and making the better choice when no one is watching. It's choosing movement when your body resists. It's saying no to habits that once felt like comfort. He cleaned up his diet. Started moving again, slowly at first. Walking. Working. Letting his body remember what it felt like to be active. Eventually, he pushed further. Boxing. Training. Building strength not just physically, but mentally. But something even more important was happening beneath the surface. He began facing his mental health. Because for the first time, he understood something many people spend years avoiding. You can't fix the body without facing the mind. The grief. The stress. The patterns that quietly shape your decisions. All of it had been there, unaddressed, unspoken, but very real. And here's a question worth asking yourself. What are you carrying right now that's showing up in your habits? Because habits rarely exist on their own. They're often symptoms of something deeper, something unresolved. For Blake, alcohol was one of those patterns. And he didn't pretend it was easy to change. In fact, he openly admitted the opposite. Cutting back was harder than he expected. Why? Because it wasn't just something he did. It was part of his identity. Part of how he relaxed, celebrated, connected. Letting go of that, even partially, meant redefining who he was. And that is one of the hardest things any person can face. Because if you're not that person anymore, then who are you? Think about that for a moment. How much of your life is built around habits that feel like you? And what would it mean to question them? To change them? To outgrow them? That's not just change. That's transformation. And it's uncomfortable. Through all of this, Gwen Stefani was there. But not in the way you might expect. She wasn't there to fix him. She wasn't pushing him into a new version of himself. She was there because she cared about something deeper. His well-being. His longevity. His ability to be present, not just successful. And there's a powerful difference between those things. One is about image. The other is about life. She supported him. Encouraged him. Walked beside him, not ahead, not behind. And sometimes, that's exactly what we need. Not pressure. Not judgment. Just someone who reminds us that we're capable of more. And slowly, almost quietly, things began to shift. Not overnight. Not dramatically. But steadily. Day by day. Choice by choice. By 2025, he had lost around 40 pounds. But here's the part most people miss. The weight loss wasn't the real transformation. It was the awareness. The energy. The clarity that comes when you start taking control of your life again. When your decisions are intentional, not automatic. Let me ask you something that might change how you see progress. What's more impressive? Someone who appears strong on the outside? Or someone who's honest enough to admit when they're struggling? Because those are two very different kinds of strength. And Blake chose the second one. He stopped pretending. Stopped hiding behind habits that weren't serving him. And started taking care of himself, not for appearance, but for life. Today, his life looks different. Not perfect, but intentional. He's still working. Still creating. Still performing. But at a pace that fits his life, not one that consumes it. Or too disconnected to feel it. And this leads to perhaps the most powerful shift of all. So now let's bring this back to you. Because this story isn't really about a celebrity. It's about something much closer to home. It's about the weight we carry, physically and emotionally. The habits that quietly shape our days. And most importantly, what would it look like if you finally faced it? Not perfectly. Not all at once. And sometimes, that quiet, difficult honesty is exactly where everything begins.